So I'd like to say good morning to everybody, and may God bless you all as we've gathered in the house of God today. Thankful for each one of you. It's just the right amount. We're not overcrowded. We're just real comfortable here. And so I look to God to help me. I'm not your super fluent public speaker type of a guy, but we trust that God can help me communicate what He's shared with me. And growing up, I guess, and then the type of occupation my dad had and what I grew up in, I guess I'm kind of a grassroots type of a person, where maybe more hands-on and less verbal than other callings in life, but a lot of hands-on. And so sometimes I've thought about it, and yeah, I get involved in a lot of equipment diagnostics, and something breaks, something fails, something doesn't work anymore, and you get called in and you have to do this thing, what's called troubleshooting. So I thought, why don't we spiritualize that and look at maybe troubleshooting in the spiritual aspects we can draw from that. So I'm just going to put 7 points up on the board here, and then when we get finishing up, I'll maybe ask you. Maybe I don't think I've exhausted it. There's probably more things, but aids and tips in problem solving or troubleshooting. So we'll just put could be other words to describe it, but we're just going to spiritualize this. Okay, so number 1. All right, so as we go through life, and I had to think probably what is the most important thing to be well set and well prepared to counteract problems in life. And many of us encounter, all of us will encounter this many times in our life, and whether it be in human relationships, whether it be in finances, whether it be in health, or many different aspects. So we run into problems, don't we? We live on planet Earth, and it's a broken world. And there's a lot of good things, a lot of beauty around us, but there's also a lot of problems. So I just have here simply, know God and His truth. I think that's number 1 in importance. We need to have an understanding of God. We need to know Him personally, and we'll be on a very good footing. Now there's a huge process to that. And it begins as children in their young ages learn from their parents and from their teachers the truth of God's Word. And there's several references I want to share with you. You don't have to turn to them all. I'll just read you this one, of course, a familiar one, 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And then here's an interesting one I found. You can turn to this one if you want. Psalm 111, verse 10. I think this is very foundational. And it's repeated in Proverbs. These same words are written in Proverbs and in Psalms, quite a few places. And it is simply in verse 10 of Psalm 111, where it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all they that do His commandments. His praise endureth forever." So, the fear of the Lord, the beginning of wisdom. The very foundation of wisdom and knowledge, I think, is the fear of God. Understanding what God has done for us. He's created the world, and this word fear, isn't the same meaning as what we would first think of being deathly afraid of something or scared or whatever. That's not the meaning of that word. It's rather to respect and to know God, to acknowledge Him. And then where it says, a good understanding have all they, I understand that word understanding, you could also say a good success have all they that do His commandments. So there you go. If you want to have success at troubleshooting or anything in life, you have to know God, you have to fear God. Then you're on a good foundation to have good success. So. And of course, the words of Jesus, John 8:32, "And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." That's also a very powerful verse. Knowing the truth, and the truth is actually something that will make you free. Isn't that amazing? Freedom in knowing the truth. So simply, yeah, to have a good knowledge and understanding the theory, guys that go to trade school, ladies that study, you've got to go. That's why you go to school all those 8 or 9, 10 years first. You got to understand the theory. You got to know the knowledge behind it, and that takes a lot of patience. And but it's very valuable. So, young people, just treasure that time in your life, and you got to study. You got to learn things. That's very important. But sadly, though, kind of, knowledge is not experience. You have all this knowledge, you can go to university, you can study, but it doesn't give you experience. It doesn't give you hands-on experience. So there you go. That's why we need the older people. We need our parents, we need our teachers, we need our ministry, and we need people that have walked the way of life. We need Jesus that walked that way ahead of us. And he's had experience, and then we need each other in this. And then gradually, as you get a little bit older, you gain experience of your own. Experience is a very costly thing, you know that? Experience is a very costly thing. It's nothing to be sneezed at. And treasure it. So when you're traveling through a valley or something difficult, just be thankful that, hey, this is my experience. I'm getting my experience. So just praise the Lord for that. Number 2. Two words. Stay calm. I've discovered in life that's so important. You got to stay calm. And there's different points that we could put underneath this. If I'd have time, I'd fill in all these points underneath, but we don't have time or space. So what's the first one under this one? Well, probably the first thing I should say is prayer. It's good for us to reach out to God. Even a highly skilled guy that troubleshoots stuff, I still pray. And just the pausing and committing it to God sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And it's certainly what we have to do. God help me. These symptoms don't line up with what I know are facts. It just doesn't make sense. God, lead me to some correct solution. So reaching out, because God, as we know, we've been told from a little on up, Jesus, God knows, he cares about the little things, right? And that's so true. And then we have, faith and trust. We have to have faith, we have to trust God. Psalm 56 verse 3 says, what time I'm afraid, I will trust in thee. So speaking of being afraid, now we've come on to the very big, I should put this under here. There's a big thing that happens sometimes is fear. As you encounter difficulty in life, there's somehow we humans, we have a fear of the unknown. There's something there, something's going on, we don't know what's going on. We tend to be sometimes afraid of that. And multiple insecurities too that happen. And also one of those could be self-doubt. You doubt yourself. Well, I don't know enough about this, I was never trained in this, like, how am I ever gonna get through this? I've never seen this before, this is strange. So we have that self-doubt and insecurity and fear of the unknown. And we know the Bible talks about that too, about fear. Fear is a healthy thing. Being able to respect a piece of equipment or respect the circumstances is a healthy thing because it can be dangerous and it can hurt you, right? It can kill you. So it's a good thing, but too much of it is a bad thing. So we have to overcome that fear. And when Peter was called out to Jesus, and he stepped out of that boat to walk to Jesus, Jesus had called for him, and he got out there on the water, and then you know what happened? He got fearful and looked around at other things, and he started sinking. So fear can be paralyzing. And why does he sometimes call people out to step out into the water before you know the full spectrum of what's ahead of you? Sometimes God wants us to step out anyway in faith, right? And it's the same in that situation. You just have to stay calm, step out in faith, and the answer will probably come. Beware, the feelings can get in the way sometimes. Sometimes it can be anger or disgust. These people are so ignorant, it's their own fault this happened. What ails them anyway? They're so rough on things and it broke. It serves them right. You know, the bit of anger can get in there, and you got to watch out for that because you're not staying calm, right? And or this is just so crazy, I want to walk off and leave, tell them to call somebody else. I don't want to do this today. So there again, you're letting your feelings and your emotions they're starting to trip you up. So stay calm. Okay, next one would be it's a big word, I guess. I was going to say look for. Well, we'll use a little word. Look for or eliminate. Look for little things first. So important. Found out that the hard way many times. So important. Look for little things first. Why is it? It's a strange human phenomena, I think. Why is it our brains want to gravitate to the worst case scenario right away? Like this, again, maybe the fear of the unknown. We come there, it's not working, something's broke. Oh, it must be really bad. Why? I'm still trying to figure this out in my own mind. I get there, and why do I always gravitate to the worst possible scenario? I don't know, maybe I'm just a pessimist. Maybe I should be more of an optimist. But anyway, that's what goes on in your mind. You don't always reveal that. You don't always express it. But it's something how we tend to gravitate to the worst possible scenario. And I could tell a little story here to illustrate that. I guess, let me see. He's not here. I can tell this story. One of my sons, he's not here, so I'll tell this story. ATV wasn't running right. It was coughing and sputtering, and it would run, but it just wouldn't run long, and it would kind of die, and it would run again and backfire and carry. So he said, "Dad, this isn't running right." He was getting kind of stressed out about it. So I went out to the shed, and he wasn't there, and so I started it. Sure enough, it ran, and then died, and then acting real crazy. And it would run again. You could start it, would run again, and then it would die. And so, oh, this is really strange. So what does Dad do? Open the fuel cap, look in there. Oh yeah, okay, there's a little bit of gas in there. Yeah, there's, shook it, you know. Yeah, okay, there's gas in there. It's way down there, I wonder. So got a gas tank, put some gas in there, hit the start button, ran like a brand new machine. It needed gasoline, and to be fair to him, he didn't realize that the reserve valve was off. So when those machines have reserve valves, so there is a little bit of gas in there, and if you don't hit the reserve, then it's going to run dry anyway, right? So anyway, so that was little things. And what he failed to do was eliminate the little things first. And that's often what will happen in life. We tend to overestimate and think it's going to be really bad, but actually it's the little things. And in Proverbs has something Song of Solomon has that well-known verse where Solomon says, "Take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines." That's often going to be your problem. And they can start out as little things, but they can soon become big things. So this can migrate to big things once it becomes progress, right? If you don't catch it at first, that becomes large. And so trace it out slowly, step by step, pause to think through it. And remember, it's probably accurate to say that 80% of the problems we attempt to source out are caused by small things. And also double check yourself. And beware of bunny trails. You know what bunny trails are. You get going down this little garden path and you're sure you know, and you forget to kind of double check yourself. And before you know it, you're on down the wrong road and you've got it wrong. Okay, so point number 4. Point number 4 is, I just wrote it this way. Yes. Oh yeah. Yes, it could be complex. And we don't want to oversimplify and get in denial that sometimes, yes, there are complicated problems. And it can be huge. But I like to say it's kind of infrequent. I think it's less than what we realize sometimes. But I think one important point here under this one is as we encounter the very difficult things in life that aren't obvious. See, the problem often is, the problem isn't physical. You get there and you can't see it. You have to go by symptoms, and you have to go by other things, what people tell you, what it did before you got there. That's often the interesting part. People tell you this story and it doesn't add up. It doesn't, so that would never be possible. Okay, it did this. Well, no, that doesn't make sense. So that's what makes it difficult. You get there, you can't see it, right? And I guess maybe that's how it is for doctors and nurses too. They can't see it. They have to go by what you tell them. So I think one important point underneath this one here is simply remain humble. Don't feel ashamed to admit or acknowledge or to verbalize that you don't know. And this is where it gets bad for the professional who's called in. Everybody's standing there, expect he or she is a magician, will instantly know what to do and locate the source of trouble, like right away, just like this, right? And it's made worse if they're standing there watching you. So that's what you walk into often. The people are expecting you, okay, we called you in, you're going to charge $90 an hour, let's get this thing fixed like right away. So the pressure's building, right? The pressure's building. So unfortunately then, as we're human nature, unfortunately the temptation is at this point to put on a false facade. You know, oh yeah, okay, I've seen that before, yeah. Yeah, don't worry, of course, it's this. Do a little bit of checking. You need all these parts, and that should get you going. Or worse yet, maybe you need a whole new car. It just isn't working. So this is sometimes what we verbalize as, or what we call as, folks, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? So you're under pressure and you want to get this done quick, and then you end up not being humble and throw out the baby with the bathwater. Sadly, I even have to admit I fell into this one day recently, probably about 4 months ago. A lady called me in, and her heating system wasn't working at all. So I got there and down the stairs in the basement, and the basement was one big royal mess. It was awful. Like, there was stuff all over the place. It was dusty. It had never been cleaned. So I got there, and then to top things all off, the system wasn't installed properly when it was done 12 years ago or so. Some major errors have been done. It was working, but it wasn't done right, and that threw it under a bad light in my mind. And then part of it was blocked, so you couldn't even open the panel to look at it. It was blocked because it wasn't done right. Disgust was building. And then what made it worse, she had 2 black lab dogs, and they were very hyper, just a little above the puppy stage, and they were ripping around, jumping on any chance to get to jump up on you, right? So you slammed the basement door such that at least they couldn't come down there. And these dogs, so anyway, it wasn't working. And I looked in there and thought, yeah, it's probably leaking gas really bad. And well, it was low on gas. And so in my own mind, I just built this conclusion that it isn't worth fixing. I'm going to tell her it's not worth fixing. It's just too bad. And that's what I told her then. And I said, you're going to need a new one, or, which is a huge price tag to that. So I left then. I gave her some other phone numbers of other people to call if she wanted a second opinion. So I found out, to my surprise, about a month later, a good friend of mine, he was a refrigeration specialist, said, hey, did you ever get a call from so-and-so? Oh, yeah, he said, I was there a couple of weeks ago. He said, yeah, I actually got it fixed. What? So he actually found the problem. It wasn't as bad as what I thought. See? So my emotions were building. I wasn't being humble. And it was repairable, but it was just that I was being overwhelmed, like you said earlier. I wasn't staying calm, being overwhelmed with all these feelings. And so I thought I'd share that for what it's worth. I'm glad that she was able to get it resolved, and now it's heat again. But he did tell me, made me feel a little better. Yeah, it's almost at the end of its life, he said. So it's, it was almost what I said it was, not worth fixing, but he actually was able to repair it. So yes, knowledge is power. Another thing I don't know where to put this point in, but knowledge is power. Education is important, but it doesn't mean you know everything or that you're invincible. I think our society worships education too much. Of course, you have to get your training for what you're going to do in life, and it's very important. But I think what happens is we kind of maybe view that a little too highly sometimes, and we don't remain humble. And I say that for myself too. We have to remain humble because, you know, the fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. That's a verse out of Proverbs 15:33. There's two verses like that. Proverbs 15 has one, and Proverbs 18 has another one. Just listen, it goes like this. The fear of the Lord is the instruction of wisdom, and before honor is humility. Before honor is humility. Proverbs 18:12 says, before the destruction of the heart of man is haughty, before destruction the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. Wow, isn't that something? So before I look at it this way, before we the honor of being the guy that figured it out, that what was wrong, or being the doctor that figured out why this incredible, difficult problem this person had, before that honor is humility. You know, we have to be humble, because we're only little instruments in God's hands, and we don't know it. We certainly don't know it all. No doctor knows it all, that's for sure. And you know, another illustration of this I found is, yes, I better put this on. This is so important. Be humble. Another illustration of this I've found. I've got to know several really good instrument players in this community over the last couple of years, and everyone that I've got to know, they're actually humble people. They can play really well. They're just stunningly accurate and beautiful. They hardly ever make a mistake, whether it be a piano player or whatever. And almost every one of those people I've met are humble folks, and they're there to help you if you have a question about a certain thing, and they're always willing and able to help you, give you advice. They're humble. They're not proud about it. I thought there you go. That fits in very well to this. So this one here, one thing I wanted to say, and this came to me as I was laying in my bed last night, is that, hey, you know what? That, yes, it could be complex. Sometimes we run into some things that, yes, they're traceable, but they're not repairable. There is those worst case scenarios we come in life. That, in other words, the house is shifted off the foundation. It's twisted too bad. Sorry, we can't fix it for you. We can't jack it up. We're going to have to tear it down and build a new house. There are those things, and those problems we encounter in human relationships or whatever it may be, we simply sometimes come up against it. There's nothing we can do about it. It's actually better not to get involved, or we'll just make it worse. But those are the times we need to commit it and give it over to Jesus, and in faith that He knows all about it, and He can supply what is needed in that situation. So we don't want to get proud, because we know sometimes there are things that we can't repair. We can't do anything about it. And like the serenity prayer, you know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and courage to change the things I can. So there is that aspect of it. But okay, so ready for point number 5. Take a break. Coffee or whatever it may be, is your break. This is a very, very important thing I've learned. Sometimes it's a difficult thing, and you've got it maybe half figured out, but you just can't. It just doesn't come to you, and you've made some phone calls, and it doesn't help. You know what? It's probably better if you would just go away and take a break, and maybe even go home and sleep over it and come back a different day. That is very, very valuable. And you know, Jesus even did this. Does anyone know the reference in the Gospels where Jesus did this? It doesn't say coffee, but it almost says coffee. They ate, actually, yeah. So this is in Mark 6:31. And you all know this reference, but you can turn to it if you want. Mark 6:31. I've got it written down here. Jesus said to his disciples, "Come ye yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while, for there were many coming and going, and they had no leisure so much as to eat." So he called them and said, "Come into this place. We'll have a rest. We'll have some lunch, and maybe some tea." Maybe they had tea back then. And isn't that amazing? Jesus even saw the value of this, to call his disciples at a time of great stress. They were involved in some pretty stressful stuff right then. And like my dad always used to say, sleep over it one night. And that's the critical thought. Sometimes it's happened to me. You've had a sleep, and you're sitting there in the easy chair or even still in bed, and all of a sudden, hey, I didn't try that. I got to try that yet. That may be the solution. Sure enough, you get there, and that's what it was. Why couldn't I think of it then? Your mind was in too much turmoil, you weren't being calm, and you had to go back and get some sleep. And then you could think a little bit more clear. Sometimes we have to wait for a better time and opportunity. Sometimes the time isn't right. Sometimes it isn't, things aren't lining up. Either the weather's not right, or it's way too muddy, you got stuck really bad. Just go away, come back, the mud's frozen, or it's dried up, and you'll be able to drive right out of there. That's an extreme illustration. But often, you know what it also means is we could insert this one here, be patient. Yes, the time may not be right. This is actually a very big one, be patient. You know, we live in an instantaneous push-button age is what we live in 2025. Nobody wants to wait, and we need instant results. Let's, push the button, it's supposed to happen. Push the button and the car starts. You don't have to turn the key anymore. All you do is push the button and the car starts. It doesn't always happen that fast. You know what? And another thing that's bad? These are really bad for you. They feed instant gratification. If, it's instantly we can bring it up and right away. And there's something about that isn't always the best, because sometimes the best things in life we have to wait for, right? So, yes, take a break and be patient. Okay, number 6. Take this. This one is simply reach out to others. Don't be shy, and maybe some people struggle with this more than others. Some people are more inclined to right away, like the child in school, that right away raise your hand and ask the teacher, see if she can help. But others are natured more to inward, so that you try to figure it out yourself. And I guess that's kind of how I was when I was younger. I would try to just do it all inwardly and figure it out myself. No, I can figure this out. No, I don't need anybody else. That's actually very untrue. That's actually not good. So you have to be willing to reach out to others for help or advice. You never have, I don't care how old you are, how experienced you are, you never have all the wisdom or the knowledge within yourself. And isn't that so biblical? That's why Solomon says in Proverbs 24, verse 6, "For by wise counsel thou shalt make war, and in the multitude of counselors there is safety." See what he said? In the multitude of counselors there is safety. So we have to be willing to reach out to others. It takes a bit of humility in that, because we're acknowledging that I don't know. So pick up the phone. I was glad I was able to do this, Edward, the other day. You have good Wi-Fi there, and the phone worked. The planer was screaming in the next room, but in that other room it's quiet. I could phone for advice, and I got the guy that I needed, and he was patient. And we went, it took about 3 phone calls back and forth till finally we cracked it and we found the problem. I didn't have all the wisdom within me, and he was more experienced at that thing than I was. So there you go. You have to be able to reach out, and don't be shy. The devil would have you think this. This is what he'd have you think. I'm alone in this. Nobody else has ever faced what I'm dealing with. No one else would understand. There's no point in asking for help, because they wouldn't know anyways. They wouldn't understand anyways. So that's a line that I struggled with when I was younger, and probably still do some. No one's ever faced what I'm dealing with. So that is simply not true. There's other people that have gone. Jesus Christ has walked through the valleys, most of the ones that you're going to walk through in life. You'll also find rich blessing in consulting with godly friends, leadership, or a mentor. It's a rich blessing as we consult with other people. We have problems in our life and we can't quite figure it out. You got to be able to talk about it, right? It's so healing and so important. Even though in those conversations, like when I phoned for help the other day, we didn't crack it the first phone call. We didn't crack it in the second phone call. I think it was actually the 4th phone call before we actually, oh, okay, this is it. and we found the problem. So when you're talking, it's not that the answer is kind of instantly right away, but it's just to be able to talk it out with, and sometimes even verbalizing it in your own mind, in your own mouth, verbalizing even that sometimes actually is a big thing, just to verbalize it. Okay, so here we go, last point. Oh, just simply rejoice. And, of course, be grateful. Gratitude is very important. And, yeah, it's just like the woman that searched through her house, it says in the Bible, she found that lost coin. And what did she do? She called her friends after her. She rejoiced. The lost is found. And so that's important too. Don't keep all that to yourself either. If you made an important discovery, if you found a solution for a problem, you should actually talk about it with other people and share it, because it rivets it in your own mind, and also it can be a benefit to other people if you're willing to share it and talk about it. Sometimes it might be a little personal, it might be a little hard to talk about it, but I think it's an important thing to do, to share the experience with others. They can benefit from your struggles, and of course, don't forget to thank God and be thankful to Him. Give the glory to Him. Yes. So one illustration we have in this is Nehemiah. You know, Nehemiah and his people, they had a huge undertaking. The walls were all smashed down, the city was flattened, and they had this zeal, this goal, huge task. And they were outnumbered for it, and they had enemies too that didn't like it. They had the huge task of rebuilding those walls. And talk about problems and troubleshooting they had to do. So by diligence and perseverance, they eventually overcame successfully. I'm not sure, don't remember exactly how many years it was, but finally they did overcome, and they were successful, and they laid that last stone in place in the wall around Jerusalem back in those days. So we should turn to then Nehemiah 12, I think it is. 12 and verse 31. Here's what they did. After they were all done, this is what they did. Then I brought up the princes of Judah upon the wall, and appointed 2 great companies of them that gave thanks, whereof one went on the right hand upon the wall toward the dung gate. Okay, there's that verse, and then move down to verse 40. So stood the 2 companies of them that gave thanks in the house of God, and I and the half the rulers with me. Now to verse 43. Also that day they offered great sacrifices and rejoiced, for God had made them rejoice with great joy. The wives also and the children rejoiced, so that the joy of Jerusalem was heard even afar off. I'm sure they had some good music going and singing and shouting. They were so happy, they were so joyful. And these were stoic people. Like, these were hard workers. They weren't just all frivolous. But they gave thanks to God. And I think that's only one example in the Bible. There are many references we could look up under this, but this is just the one I chose. So, okay, so I'll just pause. I don't feel that I have all the answers. There's probably about 3 or 4 or 5 points we could have put in there. So, does anything come to your mind? Something that you've found useful as you're facing problems in life and troubleshooting? Anything? Or just a Bible verse? Mm-hmm.
That was amazing. Truth be presented, and I would like the verse that we had for number 4.
Okay, yeah.
The one about being humble before honor is humility.
Yes, yes, that, yes. Okay, there was two references. First one was Proverbs 15:33, and the second one was Proverbs 18:12. So it just stood out to my mind, yeah, how before honor is humility. Okay, yeah, well, sorry, sometimes when I get nervous, I get talking too fast. Hope I wasn't going too fast. Hope you could hear. But that's all I have, and may God bless. And as you go through life, I'm sure you'll find other ways and other things too that are helpful. But these are just a few scattered points that maybe can be of help to someone. So God bless. And I guess we'll have a closing song.